Rain poured relentlessly over the city as people hurried beneath umbrellas, avoiding puddles and ignoring anyone who slowed them down. Outside a row of luxury apartments, a young homeless man named Noah sat quietly beside a green trash bin. His clothes were torn, soaked with rain, and covered in mud. His beard had grown thick, and his face showed weeks of exhaustion. In his hands was a small piece of stale bread he had found earlier that morning. Despite his appearance, his eyes remained calm, carrying a quiet dignity that hardship had failed to erase. Most people walked past without looking at him. Some whispered cruel comments while others pretended he wasn't there at all. Noah had grown used to being invisible. At that moment, a beautiful young woman named Grace stepped out of a nearby boutique. She wore a simple yet elegant white dress, carried a small white handbag, and held a bright yellow umbrella over her head. As she walked toward her parked car, she noticed Noah shivering in the rain. She stopped immediately. Her 3 fashionable friends, dressed in glamorous red, yellow, and emerald green gowns, watched from across the sidewalk. One laughed loudly. "Grace, don't waste your time. He's just another beggar." Another added, "People like him never change." But Grace ignored every word. She walked straight toward Noah, opened her umbrella over him so he was no longer getting soaked, and smiled warmly. "You shouldn't sit here in the rain," she said gently. Noah looked up in surprise. It had been months since anyone had spoken to him with kindness. Embarrassed, he quietly replied, "I'm all right. Thank you." Grace noticed the stale bread in his hands and realized he hadn't eaten a proper meal in a long time. Without hesitation, Grace bought hot soup, fresh bread, bottled water, and warm coffee from a nearby cafe. She handed the food to Noah, who stared at it in disbelief. His hands trembled as he accepted it. "Why are you helping me?" he asked softly. Grace smiled. "Because everyone deserves kindness." Her friends watched from a distance, shaking their heads in disbelief. They mocked her compassion, saying she was wasting money on a stranger who would never repay her. Grace simply smiled and ignored them. As thunder echoed across the city, the rain grew heavier. Looking at Noah's soaked clothes and realizing he had nowhere safe to sleep, Grace made a decision even she hadn't planned. "You can't stay here tonight," she said quietly. "Come home with me, at least until the storm passes." Noah looked stunned. "You don't even know me," Grace answered with gentle confidence. "I know enough. I know you're cold, hungry, and alone." After a long moment of hesitation, Noah slowly stood. He followed Grace toward her modest home while her friends watched in complete disbelief. Convinced she had made the biggest mistake of her life, none of them noticed the black luxury SUV parked quietly across the street. Inside sat 2 men in expensive suits who had been secretly watching Noah for days. One reached for his phone and spoke only a few words. "Sir." She finally took him home. On the other end of the call came a calm reply. "Good, continue watching. Don't interfere." Grace had no idea that the quiet homeless man walking beside her wasn't an ordinary beggar. Hidden beneath the torn clothes and weary appearance was Noah Kingston, a billionaire who had disappeared from the public eye months earlier for reasons no one yet understood. Grace lived in a small but cozy house on the quiet edge of the city. It wasn't luxurious, but every room reflected warmth and care. As soon as Noah stepped inside, he hesitated at the door, worried that his muddy clothes would stain the clean wooden floor. Grace noticed immediately and smiled. "Don't worry about the mess," she said gently. She handed him a clean towel, a fresh set of comfortable clothes that had once belonged to her late father, and pointed him toward the bathroom. "Take your time. There's hot water." Noah quietly thanked her. Standing alone under the warm shower, he closed his eyes as months of exhaustion washed away. It had been a very long time since he had felt safe. When he finally emerged wearing the clean clothes, he looked like a completely different man. Though his beard remained and his hair was still untrimmed, his confident posture and calm expression hinted that he had once lived a very different life. Grace noticed but said nothing. Instead, she invited him to the dinner table where she had prepared homemade chicken soup, fresh bread, roasted vegetables, and warm tea. During dinner, Grace never asked why Noah had become homeless. Instead, they talked about simple things: books, music, childhood memories, and the beauty of helping strangers. Noah was surprised by how naturally she treated him. She never looked at him with pity, only with respect. Before going to bed, Grace prepared the small guest room with clean blankets and a soft pillow. "Stay as long as you need," she said kindly. Noah looked at her in disbelief. "Most people won't even look at me," Grace smiled. "I wasn't raised to judge people by their clothes." After she left the room, Noah quietly reached into the inside pocket of his worn jacket and removed a small silver watch, engraved with the initials NK. It was the only valuable item he had kept. Looking at it, he whispered to himself, "Not much longer." Unknown to Grace, Noah had chosen to disappear from the Billionaire world 6 months earlier after discovering betrayal inside his own company. Rather than trust reports from executives, he had decided to experience life without wealth, hoping to learn which people valued kindness over money. His investigation had brought him to this city, and now to Grace's home. The next morning, Grace left early for work at a neighborhood community center, asking Noah to make himself comfortable. After she left, Noah quietly cleaned the entire house, repaired a broken kitchen cabinet, fixed a leaking faucet, and even restored an old wooden chair that Grace had planned to throw away. When Grace returned that evening, she stood speechless. Everything in the house looked better than before. Noah simply smiled and said, "I wanted to thank you somehow." Grace laughed softly. "You're supposed to be my guest." At that very moment, someone knocked on the front door. Grace opened it to find her 3 fashionable friends standing outside. They looked past her and immediately spotted Noah inside wearing clean clothes. One of them laughed sarcastically. "So you actually brought the beggar home?" Another whispered loudly, "Be careful. He'll probably steal from you." Grace's smile disappeared. Calmly but firmly, she replied, "He has shown me nothing but respect. Please don't judge someone you don't know." Embarrassed, the women left, shaking their heads as they walked away. Late that night, another black luxury SUV quietly parked across the street. 2 sharply dressed security officers remained inside, watching the house from a distance. One received a phone call and respectfully said, "Mr. Kingston, your board of directors has found your location. They're requesting an emergency meeting." Noah looked through Grace's living room window toward the waiting vehicle before answering calmly, "Tell them to wait a little longer." The guard hesitated. "Sir, the company has been searching for you for 6 months. Noah smiled faintly as he looked toward the kitchen, where Grace was happily washing dishes while humming a song. "I've finally found something more valuable than money," he replied. "I'm not leaving." "Not yet." The following morning began like any other. Grace prepared breakfast while Noah quietly watered the small flowers outside her home. To anyone passing by, they looked like 2 ordinary people sharing a peaceful morning. But several blocks away, 6 black luxury SUVs slowly entered the neighborhood. Residents stopped what they were doing as the expensive vehicles came to a halt outside Grace's modest house. Men and women in tailored business suits stepped out, followed by a silver-haired gentleman carrying a leather briefcase. Grace looked through the window, confused. "Are they looking for someone?" she asked. Noah remained calm. He quietly placed his coffee cup on the table and smiled. "Yes, they're looking for me." Before Grace could ask another question, there was a respectful knock at the front door. When Noah opened it, every suited executive immediately lowered their heads. "Good morning, Mr. Kingston," the older man said respectfully. "The board has been searching for you for 6 months. The company needs you." Grace stood frozen. She looked at Noah, then at the executives, unable to understand what she was hearing. "Mr. Kingston?" she whispered. The older gentleman turned toward her with a smile. "Miss, this is Noah Kingston, founder and owner of Kingston Global Industries, one of the largest companies in the world." Grace's hands trembled. She remembered the muddy clothes, the stale bread, the rainy sidewalk, and the yellow umbrella she had held over him. "You're a billionaire?" she asked softly. Noah nodded with a humble smile. "I am, but before that, I'm just another human being." Seeing the confusion on Grace's face, Noah finally revealed the truth. 6 months earlier, he had discovered that several senior executives within his company had been stealing millions from charitable foundations created to help poor families. Instead of confronting them immediately, Noah disappeared without telling anyone. Disguised as a homeless man, he wanted to see how ordinary people treated those who appeared to have nothing. During those months, he had experienced hunger, rejection, loneliness, and humiliation. Hundreds of people ignored him. Many insulted him. Some even chased him away. But one person had offered him food, shelter, and dignity without expecting anything in return. That person was Grace. Money can buy loyalty, Noah said quietly. But it can never buy genuine kindness. The chairman of Kingston Global Industries handed Noah a folder filled with emergency documents. "Sir, the board cannot continue without you. Investors are waiting." Noah looked at the papers but didn't open them. Instead, he turned toward Grace. "Before I return, there's something more important." He publicly announced that Grace would become director of the Kingston Foundation, the company's largest charitable organization dedicated to helping homeless families, children, and struggling communities. Grace immediately shook her head. "I don't know anything about running a foundation." Noah smiled warmly. "You already know the most important: qualification, compassion." Tears filled Grace's eyes as reporters, who had followed the convoy, began arriving outside. Cameras flashed while news spread across the country that the missing billionaire had been found living as a homeless man inside the home of an ordinary young woman. Standing beside Noah, Grace realized she had never truly rescued him. Instead, her simple act of kindness had reminded one of the world's richest men what real humanity looked like. And as Noah stepped toward the waiting SUVs, he quietly promised himself that his greatest investment would never again be measured in dollars, but in the lives he could help change. News of Noah Kingston's return spread around the world within hours. Television stations interrupted their regular programming to report that the missing billionaire had finally been found, not in a luxury mansion or on a private island, but in the modest home of an ordinary young woman who had taken in a homeless stranger without asking for anything in return. Reporters filled the quiet neighborhood while helicopters hovered overhead. Grace stood at the edge of the crowd, overwhelmed by the attention. She had never wanted fame. She had only wanted to help someone who looked cold, hungry, and alone. Noah stepped beside her and gently said, "None of this changes who you are." Grace smiled nervously. "I just wish everyone would stop calling me a hero." Noah looked at her with gratitude. "Then let them call you what you really are, kind." That afternoon, Noah held an emergency meeting with the board of Kingston Global Industries. During the meeting, he revealed evidence proving that several senior executives had stolen millions from the company's charitable programs. Security officers entered the room, and the corrupt executives were removed one by one. Investors applauded Noah's decision to protect the company's values instead of protecting powerful people. The board unanimously welcomed him back as CEO, but Noah announced that the company would never operate the same way again. "Profit without compassion," he told them, "is failure disguised as success." A week later, Noah invited Grace to the grand reopening of the Kingston Foundation. Standing before thousands of employees, volunteers, veterans, teachers, and community leaders, he introduced Grace as the new executive director of the foundation. The audience erupted into applause as Grace walked onto the stage. Still unable to believe her life had changed so quickly, Noah shared the story of the rainy afternoon when everyone else walked past him. "I was wearing torn clothes," he said. "People judged me before hearing a single word. But one person saw a human being instead of a homeless man." He then announced a nationwide program that would provide shelters, job training, scholarships, and emergency housing for struggling families. Grace accepted the role with one condition: every person seeking help would be treated with dignity and respect, regardless of their appearance. Noah smiled proudly. "That's exactly why you're the right person." Over the following months, the foundation helped thousands of people rebuild their lives. Many who had once slept on sidewalks found jobs, homes, and hope because one act of kindness had inspired an entire movement. One evening, Noah and Grace returned to the same rainy street where they had first met. The green trash bin was still there, but the corner looked different now. Volunteers from the Kingston Foundation were serving hot meals and warm blankets to anyone in need. Noah quietly placed the old silver watch back into his pocket and looked at Grace. "Do you know why I kept pretending to be homeless?" Even after I met you? He asked. Grace shook her head. Noah smiled. Because I wanted to be. Certain kindness like yours really existed. Grace laughed softly. And did you find it? Noah looked around at the volunteers helping strangers with smiles on their faces. I found much more than I expected. As the sun broke through the clouds, Noah gently took Grace's hand. The greatest treasure I discovered wasn't hidden in my company or my fortune, he said. It was standing under a yellow umbrella, refusing to walk away from a stranger. Grace smiled through happy tears as people around them continued serving meals with compassion. For the first time in many years, Noah no longer felt like the richest man in the world because of his wealth. He felt rich because he had found someone whose heart could never be measured by money. Story lesson: kindness given without expecting anything in return is the greatest wealth anyone can possess. Never judge a person's value by their appearance, because every life has a story. A compassionate heart can change one person, and that one person can change the world.